Mr. Kalyani, thank you so much for taking the time out and speaking with us today on this very special edition of India Revival Mission. I want to begin by asking you what's been your assessment of India Inc. and how are things moving on now that the lockdown has gotten lifted partially?
See, I think the one good thing about India Inc. in 2020 compared to 2008 is that most of India Inc. has a stronger balance sheet, is more global, and is far more capable than we were in 2008. So, how are things looking now that the lockdown has ended? Is A, we're starting to see a return of demand, at least on the consumer end of the market. Uh, Two-wheeler, pass car sales are definitely starting to pick up. The issue is that we are at a monsoon time plus the festive season is coming. So one doesn't know whether this is just pent up demand combined with pre-festive demand, or if this is back to business. I think there are reasons for Indian industry to be, let's say, glad and more cautiously optimistic, because things aren't in the gloom and doom that they were in Q1. Q2 is significantly going to be seeing revival, and hopefully with the festive season coming and the government making it clear that they want to boost demand and that the rural economy is doing well, that this should all provide a strong, let's say, impetus for at least regaining the growth momentum, if not going back to the levels of 18-19 or 17-18.
Sure. Mr. Kalyani, but the challenges for the auto industry were prevalent even pre-COVID. 2019, we all know, was challenging both domestically as well as globally. Do you think it's going to be some while before normalcy actually kicks in for the industry?
I think we need some fundamental issues to be in place. One is, we've had a financial sector crisis. This whole NBFC crisis has definitely impacted the ability of people to buy, because most Indians today buy with financing. The volumes are such that you definitely need financing for 70-80% of the vehicles bought. And in the absence of a strong financing ability, that creates a question mark. I think the interest rates are fairly, lowered compared to what it was. And if we have a stability in the financial sector and the ability of the financial sector to lend, then definitely we will see a resurgence in buying. But I think Indians are cautious people. They have a list of priorities. The first thing they will look at is, is my home safe? Is my home secure? Am I able to pay my mortgages? Am I able to, put my kids through school, educational expenses, health expenses, family expenses? Then look at, large purchases. So I think while we will see some amount of modicum returning to stability, there is, the people who drive the growth are those people who move from categories. I think those people will still remain cautious because they want to see some stability and some amount of, stable growth in their income and stability in their incomes and financial metrics before they can go and spend money.
Mr. Kalyani, the world is looking or getting more inward looking. It was America first, an Atmanirbhar Bharat. But it's sad to see that, both the pharma as well as the automotive industry hasn't been able to draw up as many parallels. Whereas you, on the other hand, manufacturing in Pune, exporting to both the US as well as the EU, have placed a benchmark in that sense. The industry per se hasn't been able to catch up. Why do you think that's the case?
I think to achieve excellence in and I don't think others haven't achieved it. I think there are many companies that do a very good job in India in many sectors. You mentioned the pharma sector. I mean, if you look at, almost the whole world has pinned its hopes of the COVID vaccine on one company, which is in my backyard and belongs to a good friend of mine. So, it's not just that. I mean, you have so many examples of fantastic companies in every sector in India. The problem is they're few and far between, because they are excellent because their management, promoters have had a very strong focus and done everything that it took to build that capability without any ecosystem support. You understand what I'm saying? Whereas if you look at Germany, you look at Japan, you look at Taiwan, you look at Korea, these are countries that have had terrible calamities in the middle of the 20th century. Around the late 40s, early 50s, these countries' economies were largely decimated due to the war. And, these countries' governments made a long-term policy, whether it was Japan's 20-year policy, 25-year policy, or Germany's rebuilding policy, where everybody was focused on what is the end goal, what will it take to make it happen, who all need to be involved, and how do you create an enabling network framework which the government supports but doesn't regulate or doesn't monitor. In a simple example is Germany's whole education industry partnership with this these technical institutions that they have built. The government provides funding, but the management, the decisions of who to hire, who to what to do in terms of research, what to do in terms of development, is all left to industry consortia. The second thing is excellent infrastructure. Today, unfortunately in India, if you want to build manufacturing facilities, you look at 8-10 big metros and their surrounding areas. So what you're doing is you're importing labor into these expensive places, creating unviable and unlivable cities, and increasing the cost for everyone concerned with a poor quality of life. Rather than that, if you built infrastructure 300-400 kilometers away from the cities into the hinterland, where you have adequate land, adequate people, you have educational infrastructure, you have healthcare, decent quality of life, I think you can substantially lower the cost of manufacturing, because the cost of manpower, the cost of commuting, the cost of land, overheads, everything goes down. So, what did China do? They did everything at a large scale. There were cities built for certain products, segments and sub-segments, and then you had 5,000 companies making chairs or 5,000 companies making widgets in one area. So then that whole ecosystem gets developed, and that then brings cost efficiency. Today, where do we have that? We have, in very few sectors, maybe pharma sector, auto component sector, because of the nature of these industries, the skills required, and the geo proximity to certain factors such as ports and raw material, these have come up. But these haven't come up by design. These have come up by default. Now, if we want to succeed in manufacturing, we have to design the right manufacturing strategy, the manufacturing ecosystem, and the manufacturing structure to make tomorrow's manufacturing effective. And now the good thing is that just like in telecom, where we were able to skip generation 1, generation 2 and go straight to generation 3, allowed us to get the latest technology 20 years ago without having the layered legacy costs. Similarly, in manufacturing today also we can do that. We can create a manufacturing ecosystem which can be more variable cost oriented, which means companies will be part of a value chain and do specific things very well, and thereby utilize their capacities more fully. Rather than everybody having everything in-house, you can have an entire ecosystem of value chains where the entire value chain together produces a set or a series of finished products. That will create tremendous competitiveness, and using today's technology, both digital and IT, I think this can create a seamless connected enterprise. So these are some of the things that the government should look at enabling. And by enabling, I mean now GST is one big enabler. Okay, everybody is on par. But there are many things, the series of state taxes, central taxes, all kinds of entry duties, levies, many different rates for different products. I think all these need to be looked at, and how do we make the greatest efficiency within the system and reduce overall transaction cost. So when you look at transaction cost or operating cost, the big costs are logistics and energy. And if you look at energy cost in India, considering the fact that we have so much renewable potential, also we have renewable, and India is one of the few countries where renewable energy is available at a fraction of the cost of conventional energy. we have to find a way to bring the overall basket cost of energy down. I think that energy deregulation and making the energy sector open so that it can be competitive is one of the most important things for manufacturing.
Sure. There's also a big change happening in the global supply chain. Are you also getting feelers from your clients to try and reduce the dependence on China?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. We are seeing that, there is I would say, almost a shocking acknowledgement of how dependent certain sectors were on China. The automotive industry, I think, more treated China as a consumer than a supplier, although it is a large supplier, but it's a much larger consumer. But if you look at, just your home goods sector, if you look at the Walmarts and the Kmarts of the world, I think they have almost 50-60% of their products are sourced from China. So for Indian SMEs, this is a huge opportunity. Now, if we were to create SME clusters focused on certain industry sectors or consumer sectors, and the government provides all the common infrastructure. Let's say there is, garmenting or textiles or furniture or any of these sectors or even electronics. If there is a way that the common infrastructure, which is your testing, validation, training, warehousing, packaging, all that can be a common facility provided by between the state and the central government. And then the manufacturers only set up their manufacturing facilities with best-in-class infrastructure at the lowest cost. I think we can be competitive because today people are willing to look at the reality of China. If you've seen what the US has done, they've made this whole thing about slave labor being used in manufacturing of goods in China so apparent that most people realize that the reason the costs are low for some part of the goods is also because of these kind of practices, which we definitely don't have in India. And as long as we can thump our chest and say we don't have any such practices in India, people are willing to pay a fair wage and a fair rate for this. So I think the world is getting re-normalized, and there has to be better communication, there has to be better awareness created, and we need to move fast and capture opportunities.
Sure. Mr. Kalyani, time and again we've seen that history tells us that pandemics or big policy changes have had very vast, long-lasting impact. It was the American shopping culture which completely changed when SARS hit. Demonetization, for instance, forced us to use plastic money, go the digital way. Where do you think the opportunity lies for the automotive industry or the big trend change that can happen with COVID?
So I think more than the auto sector, one is that people are now more scared to use public transport. Those who can afford it are trying to travel on their own. So if you see car sales, two-wheeler sales at the lower end are going up because people want to travel independently. That is one. Second is digital has become a big thing. I mean, we are all telecommuting and telepresenting, like this interview we're doing today. I mean, last year you would have probably sent an OB van to my place. Today we're doing this over Zoom. So definitely there is a difference in the way we conduct ourselves going forward. But at the end of the day, you still need things in your home. You still need to buy things. You need physical things. So the basic necessities are going to be required, and for that you will need transportation. You will need transporting of goods, services. There will be different formats of factories coming up with lower overhead in terms of people working on the indirect side from within the factory. There'll be more people working from home. All these things are definitely happening, but the requirement and demand for goods and services will not go down.
Sure. Well, what is your experience when a crisis like this happens in terms of the emergence of new technology? Versus, say, combustion engine versus EVs, Toyota versus Tesla. Do you think this kind of a crisis is going to throw up opportunities wherein there could be dominance of a particular kind of technology?
So I think any kind of crisis forces us to evaluate our beliefs and our convictions. 2 years ago, I couldn't have thought that I could conduct a business across the world without traveling to different countries. I haven't traveled anywhere for 6 months and things are fine. But so it fundamentally challenges your beliefs. And you have to learn to deal with them through the use of technology, better processes and systems. And today we're able to effectively conduct our business using digital technology, and companies that are able to digitize faster and better will have the competitive advantage. Secondly, on the automotive industry, the only thing that is holding back the electrification of the entire automotive industry is the cost of batteries, the range of batteries, and most importantly, the very fact that large part of the battery ecosystem is controlled by China. But I'm very happy to see that Korea and Japan are pretty much becoming independent of China on the battery side. And I'm fairly confident that with the moves the government is making to invite 2 battery majors into India, that we will have at least 1 Japanese company and 1 Korean company set up large battery facilities in India. And then I think that will create the big boom for the electric vehicle movement in India.
Right. A lot of manufacturing companies are also setting up local bases. Many of your peers, for that matter, in the engineering space are doing so. Would you also explore doing the same thing? If you're exporting to America, you make in America as well.
Yeah, so we are already manufacturing in America. We have 1 plant already running. We have a second plant that is coming up. And look, we will, make sure that we are able to service our customers and grow our business with our customers by doing whatever it takes. And, Bharat Forge is financially fairly strong and we have good customer relations. We have good technology. Right now, everybody is going through a bad time, so nobody wants to invest. But in 2-3 years, everything will be back to normal, or at least we'll have a normal state where we know where we are. And then we'll relook at how do you grow and evaluate that.
Right. Mr. Kalyani, I was just, scanning through government data, and according to it, auto company imports to India are currently less than $25 billion. Do you think there is a big opportunity in here for you?
So I don't know the figure $25 billion, but I've looked at the top 10 companies and they have, sizable couple of $1 billion imports for sure. But that is direct imports of the automotive companies. If you include their supply chains and things, your figure may be closer to, what you're talking about. I think definitely as the economy scales up and, there is a awareness about, this whole Atmanirbharta, and I think every company is looking at this. And I'll tell you one thing, in any product or segment that we are present, you don't need to import anything from anywhere. And in fact, most companies don't, because we are making the best products in the world in India, for India and the world, and we are competitive. And we are also looking at, through our technology and research capabilities, getting into new areas. So we got into lightweighting, into aluminum in India 2 years ago. So we set up a very large center for lightweighting where we do extremely large aluminum castings. We make aluminum forgings also in India. We have now gotten into making power and control electronics also. And we will continue to add products and technologies so that we can reduce this list of imports from China or other places and become more self-dependent.
Right. Another trend which is at play is, Mr. Kalyani, in consolidation. Be it banks, be it pharmaceutical, be it autos, consolidation is the big thing that is taking place. Be it the cash crunch, the liquidity issue, challenge of execution. It's basically survival of the fittest that we're seeing play out across categories. Do you think this is bound to play out for your sector as well?
So I definitely see consolidation opportunities. I see 2 opportunities. One is looking at opportunistic situations where companies are financially struggling and need, an infusion in order to survive and tide over the current time. And the second is strategic acquisitions. So, both make sense for different reasons. Some are shorter, or short-term oriented, and some are more long-term and strategic. So we're looking at both. In fact, what we're doing is, as a precursor to acquisitions or as a part of our whole Atmanirbhar program, through our R&D system and our future needs, we have developed an ecosystem of more than 400 SMEs that we work with, MSMEs. And with these MSMEs and their unique capabilities and technologies, jointly with what we have, we are offering new products and systems and subsystems to a whole host of different industries. This could be from ranging from automotive to defense to as far as electronics and artificial intelligence. So we are already working in these areas. While I wouldn't call these acquisitions, in some of these cases, maybe more than a dozen companies, we have made investments as well. So we are working in that area. These are strategic and tactical investments, and I think that good companies should take opportunity of this time and make these kind of inroads, so that it allows you a greater collaborative growth and future going ahead.
Sure. But from a shareholder perspective, investors and market commentators alike, they look at data points in terms of where Bharat Forge is headed. So if you could just highlight broadly what the lead indicators are telling you in terms of, either volume, GDP growth, interest rate trajectory, or just the basic pure demand supply situation on ground.
So, you've seen all the indicators. I mean, I will only talk about what's in the public domain. The public domain is the heavy commercial vehicle production for the last quarter in India was somewhere in the region of 7 to 8,000 plus 1,500 buses. The ACT figures for the last month of July came out, which was at about 20,000. So this has been consistently growing in the US, and the US seems to be on target for its 220 to 240,000 number, minus what they lost for the COVID period. So that definitely is a strong year. India also is seeing a better growth. And, unfortunately, we have a board meeting coming up on the 12th, so I can't talk about any numbers. But I think overall sentiments are better than where they were, and I think it's looking good. Looking better than expected. And as a company, we've done a lot of cost reduction, cost cutting. So as a company, we will definitely come out far stronger than we went in.
Right. Mr. Kalyani, what this pandemic has also done is that it's made us spend a lot of time with ourselves, and it's really made us introspect and look within. So as you look back, what would you say were your most joyful moments, and what were the most stressful times since the pandemic hit?
So I'll tell you what has been the most stressful moment. The most stressful part has been, worrying about everyone that is part of our family. When I say family, I mean everybody who's a colleague or employee, partner, or any of them, and worrying about them going through this COVID. I mean, I've seen people in Pune get sick, and it's been terrible. And making sure that we sensitize, train, educate our workforce and their family members in best practices on how to minimize the impact of COVID. That has been the most stressful thing. The greatest thing has been, the amount of time I've got to spend with my father and my children and my wife. We've been at home, working from home largely. I mean, I do go to the office once in a while, but, at least 3 days I'm at home, 4 days I'm at home, but working from home. And, the quality time that I've spent, I think luckily enough that we've not gotten on each other's nerves, and we've actually gotten a lot closer to each other. So that's been the really good part. And I've also rediscovered some of my old passions. So that has been a really good thing.
Mr. Kalyani, always a pleasure having you on ET Now. Thanks as always for taking the time out and speaking with us today on India Revival Mission.
Thank you, and all the best.